Get 5 more fragments and you will receive 1 silicon free.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, are Galax and Petty. Let's see. Let's get to the news, such as this. Petty, we start off with you this week.
Where the hell do I start? Honestly, until today, things have been relatively quiet. And then Universe decided to say screw me in particular. Oh, let's see. Today when we were in the car to my dentist appointment that I was supposed to have today, my mom basically was told by her now former employer that she has run out of time on quote-unquote leave, and they are letting her go. So that sucks because she's lost her insurance, so she can't get any for diabetic medicine. And even though she has been doing what they asked of her, applying at jobs and going to interviews, none of them ever tell her, if she's qualified for the job, if they've passed up on her. So that's kind of fucked. The best we can guess is this all was just lip service, because she has a lawyer for workers' comp. This is basically all just lip service, so if the lawyers basically can't go after them because they quote-unquote did what they could. So that's wonderful. She is going to be able to apply for unemployment, though we're not sure how much she's going to get because she's been on workers' comp for the past 2 years. So she may get that amount again. She may get what her base pay was. She may get nothing. We don't know yet. So yeah, it basically kind of sucks that her, 8 years working for that hospital, and they basically threw her out on the curb. And then later, I was supposed to have a dentist appointment, but because a holdup at going through McDonald's drive-through, I was 20 minutes late because we got caught in the end of a traffic jam. So I had to reschedule my dentist appointment for sometime mid-January.
They didn't fine you, did they?
No, they don't do that. They do have a 3-strike policy, but I've only ever gotten this one, so...
My dentist has a policy is if you miss an appointment, you owe them $40.
I mean, I can kind of see that, but
that's fairly common. If you miss something without for medical and similar, if you miss an appointment without at least a certain amount of time of notice, that
I did call and tell them we were basically stuck in traffic because we live over an hour away.
Mm-hmm.
So, not much we can do about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that kind of sucks. I guess the only decent thing that happened was yesterday I was able to grab Pokemon Violet. So, yay!
Cool.
Though, ugh. after everything after it, I'm pretty sure the game might be cursed.
Like,
how so?
Mom getting fired, late for dentist
Oh yeah.
appointment.
anyway,
That's I thought you'd like started playing and gotten one of the major glitches right off.
Oh no. Luckily, most of those have been patched, like, the crash looping one and stuff like
Some
that.
of them have, and a lot of the other ones don't happen if you're playing. Did you get a physical or a digital?
Physical.
Okay. Unless you're playing digital from the SD card and you have a shitty SD card, which is pretty common because they're very cheap.
Yeah, I think the only issue I had is one time when because I was re-rolling for my starter to get a female Sprigatio. One of the times when I went to select the starter, the game crashed to the Switch home screen.
Yeah, but that's that. I mean, as long as you save regularly, that's minor.
Yeah, I
The
had
graphics, the graphic. I'm not saying it's like okay for a high end game to have this level of things, but like in terms of stuff that will ruin the game for a person.
But yeah. Other than that, yeah, just kind of trying to keep myself from going insane. So next victim.
that'd be Galix.
I don't think there's anything special going on here, really. We have a little bit more help for one of the things I'm doing at work, so I need to talk to the person that is doing that so that we can coordinate our efforts better, so we don't like butt heads trying to do not butt heads, but like
not do the same thing at the same time.
Yeah, it's data entry basically. So when both of us grab the same file to enter, that's not helpful.
Yeah. Even worse if you put in different data for the same file.
Well,
you say that, but
well, the main thing is that even when we do move it out of the way, sometimes people send in 3 identical PDFs or 3 scans of the same piece of paper.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And sometimes one of us will grab one of it and the other one will grab the other one. So I'm going to try and see if we can arrange it so that, like each person has certain people that they're doing. Because that seems more efficient. Anyway, so there's that. Let's see. I don't think anything major new has happened in video games.
Not until tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because the Keeleys are tomorrow.
Oh, right, that abomination.
Yeah, and probably the thing we cover next week, since look, it's December. There's not a lot going on.
Yeah, so I think that's probably it.
All right.
There are a bunch of video game things this weekend. It's the first big run in Splatoon 3, and there's a den event in Pokemon that I probably won't even be able to participate in because I haven't beaten the game, so I don't have 6-star raids yet. Or 5-star raids for that matter. And I think there's also a Pokemon Go thing for Keldeo, so we'll see how that goes. But that's all.
Anyway, I guess it's my go. Let's see. Pretty quiet week this week, actually, in my neck of the woods. Let me see. Ended up picking up a Disney Plus subscription because that's about to increase in price in a few days at time of recording.
So it's one of those get in on the grandfathered rate.
Yeah, I could only do monthly though, since I could not pay the yearly rate because I had a hospital bill to take care of this month. It's about the same price. Now that I think about it. Let's see. But let's see. Picked up a new digital scale because my old one is a spring-loaded one, and it's was kind of inaccurate. Like, wasn't on the zero, kind of either direction off a few pounds.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's such a pain in the ass to fix. You just go get a new one.
Well, plus it was only $10.
Yeah.
So, it's not it's not worth the headache of adjusting and dealing with this. Just I got a new digital scale for 20, and it works fine. My current weight is 192, so
oh man,
I'm continuing to follow my diabetic plan in that. Right now it's more about maintaining the weight than losing more weight. Relative to height. I know I'm like, technically speaking, I'm still on the higher end of the normal BMI scale. I'm like, honestly, I know it's still used in the medical profession and all that, but I'm like
so that lost a lot of value to me when I learned that sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s or whatever, they just arbitrarily decreased the weight for all of the benchmarks by about 10-20 pounds.
Yeah, the BMI is kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, let's see. Also picked up some new compression gloves. Like, the old ones were a bit small in that they quickly had a hole torn it. Like, though I'm wondering if these ones are a bit too large, since, granted, I got them in large size. Like, but since it's the turning of the seasons, even here in Florida, it still gets in like the 50s. Like, so, and given the age and chronic condition, I do feel it. Like, I'm wondering if that's why my hands have been aching more lately. Probably. Let's see. I've been playing a lot of Fallout New Vegas. Like,
oh man.
I can see why this one's much more highly praised over Fallout 3, which I played not too long ago as well. Like,
they did fix DRM in that, right?
I think so.
All
but
right.
Like Fallout New Vegas, like Fallout 3 was too lenient. Like, as in that, okay, the difference is this gives you a perk. I'm not going to go into what that is, but it's basically a thing that helps you out. It gave you a perk every level. So by level 15, I was
basically a god.
Yeah, I was maxing out stuff pretty regularly, and I was like trying to figure out what to put points in, basically. Like, whereas Fallout New Vegas, it gives you perks every 2 levels for the specific reason of not having you become too powerful too quickly. Now, it's better balanced, which makes sense because the people who worked on New Vegas were people who worked on the first 2 Fallout games. Like, and also been playing a bit of the games that we're going to be reviewing on Sunday. Also, on that note, Petty, do watch the volume levels this time.
Yes, yes.
Like, I don't think you told Galax, though. Like,
yeah, I messed up.
Yeah.
Oh,
The music on the bad caterpillar.
Could nobody hear us last time?
Basically.
The bad caterpillar review, specifically. Like, but anyway, with all that in mind, merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. It's been a fair few years since we've had our guests on the program, but they are back. And we are pleased to welcome to the program once again Kevin Dressel of Shiny Dolphin Games and JC of Spicy Gyro Games.
Hello. Hello. How's it going?
It goes well, I think, for the most part. Like, how are you two doing this evening?
Pretty
We're
good.
keeping on.
Good. Right. So, it's trying to remember exactly when we had you on the broadcast, but I do remember it was in relation to Clash Force.
Oh, was it
Yeah, I
Clash
bet it
Force?
was. It
I thought
was. It was
I thought it
Clash
was 4-year-old.
Force.
Okay, all right.
Maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Well, wait a second. Clash Force. I mean, unless the podcast was a while after the game came out, it must have been 2018, maybe 2017,
Oh
2018.
man, time goes very quickly. You're
Yeah,
right.
well, all of that is very possible, and it's not unusual to have a guest on the program, with that kind of time gap. It all depends on projects, and indeed, we are pleased to have you back on the program because you have a new one to talk about. The interestingly named Panic Porcupine.
Yes.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this might have been fed some inspiration from a certain blue hedgehog.
Pay no attention to the painting in the corner.
Might have. I don't know. That's a dubious claim. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so this was us trying to do a more full Sonic physics engine. Our previous game, Polyroll, we mostly faked the physics, and we didn't have like 360 movement like the loops and everything. So that was kind of how this started, and then the pitch kind of came right after that, I think, of like a Meat Boy plus Sonic type of hybrid.
Yeah, having played about an hour, maybe an hour and a half of the game, I can see where that comparison comes into play. But it's that a bit later because I dissect that bit of commentary you just offered. You had to fake the physics versus real physics. I'm like, what does that mean?
Well, Sonic's physics are like a lot of them are fake to begin with, I guess. But what we did on this game is we studied, the Sonic physics guide is on the internet, and then we did our own research too. But
yeah, we're like where he was referring to like fake physics was our previous game, which is much more of a standard like Mario style platformer. It didn't really have any like slope physics or anything fancy like that. It just had some miscellaneous like Sonic type stuff in it, but it wasn't like accurate to Sonic.
I think Adam might be having some technical difficulties.
Oh.
Adam, everyone is fine except for you.
Okay. Skype decided to randomly mess with my speaker settings again.
Again, yeah, sounds about right for Skype.
Sorry about that. Technical problems and live broadcasting. Always this kind of awkward mix. Anyway, so I'm not sure if you heard my last question here, but exactly what do you mean by faking the physics of your versus having actual physics?
Well, the last game, Polyroll, Justin said a little bit of this earlier. That was more like Sonic mixed with Super Mario World. So, like, it was mostly flat terrain, and where there was sloped terrain, there wasn't like gravity pulling you down or making it harder to go up. And we also didn't have things like loops where you go upside down, things like that. So it wasn't really momentum-based gameplay in Polyroll. And then this game, we figured out how to make an actual Sonic-like physics engine. And so this one has that momentum-based gameplay that Polyroll didn't.
Now, was that a difficult challenge to do, getting actual physics into your platform game?
I think it took us about a year to get the physics right. I mean, it's not like we worked full time, but it was a lot of iteration, and we had a test level. I think our first level was an imported Sonic level, actually.
I mean, that's not unusual in game development.
Yeah.
It was
I bet a lot of platformers have started with like Green Hill Zone or Mario World 1-1 or something.
Oh, even like the developers themselves will do that kind of thing. Like Super Mario World very famously started out as a port of Super Mario Brothers 3 to the Super Nintendo, for example.
Yeah.
Or Kirby's Adventure started out as a port of Kirby's Dream Land. I could go on, but it's a I won't say cheap and easy way of prototyping, but it's less. You've got something there that you worked on, so you can test lab it a bit easier than building from scratch.
And if some of it ends up on the cartridge, you don't get sued.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, when did things finally take shape in terms of nailing the physics down?
I don't know, probably a year and a half ago, I guess. Seems like.
Yeah, after we did our initial testing on that imported Sonic level, Justin made this test level that stressed the physics engine, like a really, really long hill leading to a loop, which just completely broke everything. So that was like the second step towards finishing it. And once that sandbox level worked, I think that the physics had pretty much come together at that point. So we polished it by giving it an extreme example, I guess, of the kind of level design we might do.
And then we ran into a million more problems as I made levels.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
So,
what did the nailing down the physics break?
Well, the first thing that happened was you passed through that loop at the end of the hill that I mentioned. You just flew right through it, so we had to change how we were doing collision detection. Then what else broke after that?
well, I mean, it's definitely a good example because I mean, I think the challenge that we faced was we had like a character that was like everything was tiny, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the character was only like the size of a tile, and like whereas Sonic is like these kind of big chunky characters and stuff, we had this little character that was like very small, and so like collision detection was trickier because you had to be that much more precise. Like if you actually play Sonic and like zoom in, there's a lot of like wonkiness with the way he sort of jitters around on things, and you forgive that because he's a big character and we had a very tiny character. I don't know what other problems we ran into. I mean, it was just level design things. I would design a level to do something I hadn't thought of before, and then he would get stuck, or he would go too fast, or he would, just the typical collisions and various physics snafus.
Fair enough.
There's several places where we have, even in the shipped game, we just have little sensor objects in specific places that do little physics customizations to make it all work.
Don't tell them about that. Don't tell them that. Secret.
You heard nothing.
This is why there's no level editor.
Pay no attention to the man behind the magic curtain, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of band-aids taped over things that you don't see that we would have to do a lot more work to make it. To
Sounds like Sonic 4 development to me.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case in a lot of larger team games as well.
Yeah.
Well, I will confidently say that our physics are far better than Sonic 4. So,
I mean, you have physics that work for the most part.
Yes.
So you're already hitting under par.
Wasn't Sonic 4's entire thing like, oops, we have no inertia?
That was specifically the PC version, if I remember correctly. Like,
yeah, modders had to fix that.
Yeah, I mean, it eventually got fixed, but I think the mobile port of Sonic 4 was pretty bad too.
The whole port of Sonic 4 constitutes a war crime, my friend.
Right. Anyway, speaking of Sonic and all that, outside of nailing down his particular brand of physics, was there any particular reason you went with a tribute character here in this porcupine character?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like it was like the first thing that popped into our heads when we kind of decided to do this. I had actually played with like this porcupine character before. He wasn't named Panic, but I had a little porcupine ode to Sonic and stuff. And then once we decided like to do a Meat Boy style game, and like just the nature of like the repetitive deaths, and then like the fact that we were going to do like this tiny character, it just lent itself to sort of a humorous approach. I mean, like Sonic had like a mini Sonic in some of the levels that was kind of funny, and so we just thought a game where you're going to die a lot, and we're sort of going for Meat Boy inspiration. Meat Boy kind of had humor to it, and we're basically making a game that's like an ode to another game, and so you kind of have to like, you can't be too serious about that. And so it just made sense to do this sort of Saturday morning cartoon humorous approach with the character design and stuff.
I can see that angle, especially from the intro.
Sure.
Right. And let me see here. Yeah, so you brought this this fusion up a few times, and I'm interested, like, how much of, what is the word? How much did, combining Sonic and Super Meat Boy together, how much of a pain was that?
Well, it introduced, again, some challenges, like, because Sonic was never really a hard game. Like, I mean, maybe some people would find elements of it challenging, but like the game was designed around this very forgiving health mechanic with these rings, where you get hit and you can pick your rings back up, and if you're practical enough at it, like you can basically take unlimited hits. You can just get hit over and over again. And I think they probably did that because they realized you were constantly careening into things you couldn't see because you're moving so fast, and they had to be very forgiving with the health system. So now here we are going into a game saying there is no health system. You get hit, you die. So like that was a challenge to figure out. It's a level design challenge. It's a challenge where you have to figure out like how much death will somebody put up with, and how long are they willing to play a level before they get sick of playing it over and over again. And so it was a constant sort of balancing act to sort that out. I think probably the biggest challenge, I don't know that we resolved it. I don't think that we totally did, but it's like Sonic's physics, like the whole nature of Sonic is that like you don't really ever have to master Sonic to beat Sonic. Like you don't really have to have a good grasp of Sonic's physics to complete the game. Like you can kind of fumble your way through, especially in the later ones where they introduced spin dash and stuff. It was like you really didn't have to learn about momentum. You didn't have to learn about the angle and stuff like that. And so here we are making a game where it's about precision, something that Sonic never required. And so that sort of highlights some of the I don't know how to put it, like some of the wonkiness of Sonic physics. Like it sort of amplifies the fact that Sonic was never that precise of a game. So we just kind of figure out like how precise we could make the like we could never do stuff as precise as like Celeste or Meat Boy, because the physics just introduce this element. It's not randomness, but it's so hard to gauge. It's like a pool player trying to aim the pool balls at this exact angle, and it's really hard to replicate over and over again. So it was just a balancing act.
Variability might be the word you're looking for, because that would describe Sonic. Like he's definitely a bit more guided by chaos theory than, say, Mario. Like,
yeah, sure. I mean, like it is at the very, but like it's a matter. It's not just a matter of like you jump and this is how high you jump. It's a matter of like what angle you're on when you jump. It's a matter of how fast are you moving on that angle when you jump. Are you moving downward at a 45-degree angle or a 50-degree angle? Because that's going to decipher like which angle you jump at. So there's all these variables. And I think, we both grew up with Sonic, and we kind of honestly took it for granted because in this, like Mario, I think people take Mario's physics for granted as well. And what we learned is like Sonic's physics are not sort of something that people naturally instinctively understand. Like even a lot of Sonic fans don't really get Sonic's physics. So it was something where we didn't totally anticipate that. We thought, well, people play platformers and this is a platformer, and Sonic is a huge franchise with billion sales or something. And so we thought, well, this has an audience. I mean, it does have an audience, but it was just, we learned a lot on the way.
I can imagine. I mean, that was an approach that pretty much every developer in the mid 90s took. Let's rip off Sonic to some degree.
Let's rip off Sonic and let's rip off Mario.
Yeah, I'm like, and when you do that, you get an abomination, or as we also like to know it, Bubsy. Like, I don't care who tries to rehab that Bobcat. I really, really hate his freakish combination of Mario and Sonic gameplay.
It was a game for sure, yeah.
Anyway, so did you ever consider putting the spin dash in this game?
I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. No.
Yeah, it was really part of the pitch that we gave to each other originally, that it would be
that would
almost
kind of
like momentum puzzles.
Yeah, that would inherently make a lot of the momentum stuff a lot easier, because you can just pull it out of your spin.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a part of it was like going back and saying, well, what didn't Sonic explore? Like, it was kind of like taking an alternate reality offshoot, right? Where you say Sonic franchise continued without introducing the spin dash. Like, what are the other directions it could have gone? What other kind of concepts could have come out of this basic premise? Whereas, it did go one direction. And so we just wanted to explore that.
Fair enough. I mean, I suppose another answer is exploring like the super peel out. The big move from Sonic CD, which was definitely not the spin dash.
It's still money for nothing and momentum for free, though.
True, but it's not. It doesn't offer you the protection that the spin dash does. That's the key.
Right, but in the case of our game, that wouldn't have mattered because it's one hit, you're dead anyway. So
right.
we didn't have any enemies or anything, so it wouldn't have. The ball doesn't actually offer protection in our game.
Yeah, fair enough. But I noticed like the answers seem to lie in terms of what you did with the stages. Like this stage here is a riff off of Carnival Night Zone. And its particular brand of design.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the original premises we explored, was like doing a bouncy game, a game that was more like Sonic Spinball or something. And at the end of the day, we felt like it was a concept that was better used in moderation, which is why it's like we just kind of dedicated a few levels to like bouncy mechanics, because again, like it's another element where it's like imprecise, it's hard to gauge and stuff, and so it's just better used in moderation.
Yeah, last level I played is the one with we got the pinball mechanics in, which are, I will say they recreated the aggravation I have with Sonic pinball physics. So I suppose good job there. It's just.
I blame Justin.
That's fine.
I've just never been the biggest fan of Sonic's pinball phases, let's call them.
He was never a Sonic
there's an
pinball
argument
wizard.
to be made that the whole thing is partially pinball.
Right, no, but there are specific sections in Sonic.
Yes, I know when they literally put him in an actual pinball machine or pachinko machine, as the case may be.
Yeah. They're not.
I mean, I would agree with you on that. Like, I was never the biggest fan of like Casino Night or Carnival Night or those stages or anything. I enjoyed elements of Sonic's Pinball and stuff, and that's really why I didn't like go overboard with it. And also, we weren't building a pinball physics engine. Pinball is a very specific game, and I think combining Sonic's platforming with that is not. It seems more obvious than like it is. Like it seems like, oh, a perfect fit, but there's a lot of aspects to the way Sonic's physics work that are just, it's not how pinball works.
I played Sonic Spinball, so yes.
Well, Sonic Spinball had the additional problem of like trying to keep its cake and eat it too, regarding you still have some platforming in there.
Yeah. Like, not being helped by that was clearly given by the B team. Like,
considering that if I remember correctly, it was one of the ones that was the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog themed as much as the actual games.
It tried to be. I'm like, it's just Sega of Japan really, really, really hated Sonic Sat AM. Like, if you ever wonder why that show and that aspect of Sonic was buried, it's because Sega Japan did not like the darker tone that Sat AM took. Like, but anyway, so
I grew up with that cartoon, so I have fondness for it.
Yeah, I'm like, no, that was actually a good cartoon versus The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, which was
cocaine infused animation.
It was not so good, but I enjoyed that one as a kid too.
I wouldn't necessarily say it was bad, but it was very strange.
I mean, when you only I think there were only 2 Sonic games available by that point.
Oh yeah, they did not have much to go off of, especially since not all of the Japanese series Bible stuff was translated at all.
I will say that one went less off the rails than the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. But
I think we could fill an entire episode with that one since.
I mean, it's the same deal where the source material was not translated into English very well first.
No, but they they weren't literally combining 2 disparate game. Super Mario Brothers Super Show is a weird combination of Super Mario Brothers 1 and 2.
Fair.
Yeah, none of that going on in even the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. Anyway, getting back on track with Panic Porcupine here. So, outside of the Super Meat Boy stuff, what else did you do to differentiate it from an actual Sonic game?
Kevin?
Oh.
Let's see. I mean, I think
in the beginning.
Oh dear.
The physics engine is slightly different. I will say that.
Okay.
And I think we've got other gimmicks in the game that aren't in Sonic. The core of this game is really what if Sonic were really hard, had very small levels, and had momentum puzzles. That's definitely the core differentiator. It's almost like a spoof of Sonic too, in a way.
I honestly feel like I almost think it's not fair because you have there's been 20 million Mario knockoffs over the years, right? And nobody really calls them Mario knockoffs. They just call them platformers or mascot platformers, and there's thousands of them. But as soon as you introduce this mechanic of physics in any way, like you're rolling down hills or anything like that, it's like a Sonic clone or a Sonic knockoff. And I think there's there's something to be said for using that as a genre. I feel like it has the potential to be a genre, which is part of the reason why we made this game. I think there's so much more you can do with the basic elements of the Sonic concept that just haven't been explored that much. And so that this was one way of exploring that. And I don't know that it has that much in common with Sonic at its core, other than you say it's a character that rolls into a ball and builds momentum down hills. And
I mean, you could definitely get away with calling it a momentum platformer rather than a Sonic reference, aside from the fact that your playable character is a small, spiky mammal who curls onto a ball.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
exactly. Like those are kind of the two elements that, and I'm not trying to like, pretend like Sonic wasn't this like momentous inspiration. Clearly we were inspired by Sonic and the game spoofs Sonic, and I'm not trying to make it seem like, oh, we're not building off of Sonic, but I really do believe that like there's more to be explored in that premise, and there's a lot more that you can do with it. And I do think that this game probably can appeal. I mean, I've had numerous people say to me, they're like, I do not play Sonic. I do not like Sonic. I've never been into it, but I like this. And I'm not saying like better or anything like that. It's just that I think this does appeal to, it of course is going to appeal to some Sonic fans, but I think it has the potential to appeal to people that just weren't into Sonic.
I could see that. I mean, to address your query, well, I mean, that goes back to what I was saying. Like, Mario certainly influenced the platforming genre like no other, but you don't find a whole lot of direct comparisons to Mario, if that makes sense. Whereas, once again, going back to the 90s, like, you will find Sonic's influence all over the place. This actually came up in a recent game review, as we covered like one of the many forgotten platforming mascots that came out in his wake. Because the difference between Mario and Sonic is so many people try to directly rip off Sonic, not just his character, his level design, his attitude, his everything. The 90s, even the very successful Crash Bandicoot owes a lot of life debt to Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sure, yeah. I mean, like I think that's the interesting thing about it. Like when these other companies, I go down the laundry list of them, like tried to do Sonic, almost none of them tried to replicate the physics or the momentum or the gameplay aspect of it. I mean, certain elements, they were trying to take the character. They were trying to do an animal character with attitude who puts on sunglasses, and they were trying to capture a vibe. Whereas
you got a lot more furry Mario with attitude than you do running around at the speed of sound.
Yeah, whereas like Mario, for what it's worth, Mario doesn't quite have a vibe. It's like he's this chubby little it's just a weird character. Nobody's going to be like, oh, we have to do the next plumber character. Like nobody's thinking that. So like Mario games tended to sort of pull from the gameplay a little bit more. You had like Kid Chameleon and stuff like that. Great Gianna sisters.
I mean, we are getting into deeper design philosophies now because the basic compare and contrast with Mario and Sonic is Mario was actually not set out to be a mascot character. He wasn't designed that way. You also find this with Pac-Man. They were designed more with the limitations of the era. The documentation of how Mario ended up being Mario is pretty well known. But, he got a mustache, he got the coveralls, he got everything because that's what you could really display in 1981 arcade dimensions. Now, mind you, I don't specifically know why they shifted him from a carpenter to a plumber, but, everything else is there because it needed to
probably because of all the pipes.
Probably, but my point is it still holds true. Like Mario was designed to fit the limitations of a very specific era. Sonic was designed to specifically appeal to kids and teenagers.
Yeah.
And was the 90s. So, Sonic's attitude, it fit well with 1991's attitudes. You could say that Sonic defined the 90s, but Sonic was also very defined by the 90s. Because just go and look at some of the commercials that were airing on kids' television at that point in time, and you will see where Sonic picked up his influence, like specifically bubble tape commercials, because just look at the way they were selling bubble tape to kids. This anti-authority punk rock aesthetic.
Want to shove 3 entire feet of bubble gum in your mouth all at once? Your parents can't stop you.
That's like, that was more late 90s
I know,
marketing.
I'm kidding.
No. But there's actually a stark difference between the early 90s and the late 90s. But I feel like we'd be getting off track at that point.
That's almost more of an MSP topic, honestly.
Anyway, so how many levels are contained in this game?
I think there's like 50 something. Okay. I forget exactly.
There is enough.
Oh, and what are the other worlds? Because we've seen the not quite Green Hill Zone, and we've got Daylight Carnival here. What is next for Mr. Panic Porcupine?
Oh, okay. Let's. There's a construction zone.
Okay.
And then there's the haunted level. Filled with chainsaws and things that cut you apart. And then there's the winter level, and then there's the laboratory level, which is the evil scientist home.
Right. And I suppose we should also talk about the way you achieve victory in the game. Because, and I believe this is another riff on Sonic, because you have to get the what do you call them? The chickadees? Chickabirds, which I assume is a homage to the Flickies.
You know, it's funny because it wasn't, but it ended up that way. It just ended up making sense. I made those for as a hidden collectible in another game, and they were actually based more off of what were the things? There were little animals you collected in Banjo-Kazooie, and then
Jiggies?
and then there's they did the same thing in Jet Force Gemini, and then I know there were some more games. I think a little bit maybe the Chows from Sonic, but I don't know. They were just this little random goofy bird sprite I made for another game that I never made. And then when we were doing this game, originally the thought was he would just reach a goal. You know, there'd just be an end of a level. And then as we were doing the test level, we thought that this mechanic of levels being a little more skate park with different ways you can go, and so you can sort of strategize how to beat a level the fastest, what order to collect the chickaburbs in. But we just thought there was an element to collecting multiple things, and I was like, hey, I have this sprite from this other game I never used, and that just got dropped in. And then once we had those in, the eggs kind of followed suit. Originally we were thinking he was going to collect energy drinks or something like that, and then the eggs just kind of made sense.
Yeah, I think it works thematically, especially since you found a way to integrate it all into a boss encounter or encounters.
Yeah.
I mean, does every fight with the Dr. Yegman here culminate with this particular pattern?
Yeah, it's the overall premise is you're freeing the birds that are spinning around him.
Okay.
Obviously, there's different mechanics to each boss, but that's the general. Because we wanted to, I don't know, we wanted to explore just a different boss mechanic that sort of just doing it where it follows the sort of theme of the levels, which you're freeing the birds. And we just thought, instead of hitting him, let's have you free the birds, and then the birds all attack him at the end. So it was just a way to change it up.
Fair enough. And it seems like the optional collectible are the eggs.
Yeah.
Now, do those unlock anything? Or are those for is that a bragging rights reward?
It's basically a bragging rights reward to get 100%. We just thought it's a hard enough game as it is. We didn't really want to put anything behind a wall that makes it, really, really hard to get to, that like where people might feel like they're missing out on content because of their skill level.
Okay.
That said, it's obviously still a very challenging game, but the eggs just became sort of for that really hardcore subset of fans who felt, because I mean I've had people like playing the last world and they're like, these levels are too easy, and I'm like, wow, okay. Just,
what kind of psychopathic drugs are you on, homie?
well, and yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like different, when you build a game that's based around sort of this premise of challenge, it opens you up to this problem of like there's just such a wide variety of skill levels, and like no matter how like absolutely deranged you design something, somebody's going to love it and want more. So you can do testing, right? But like you don't really know until you put the game out there and start seeing the response. Like at the end of the day, all the testing and like conventions that we did, can only tell you so much till you get it out there and put it in people's hands and have them complain that it's too easy.
Right.
And you do get something if you collect all the eggs in the game. But
yeah,
it's a small little thing.
If you get 100%, you do unlock something. But yeah, again, it's...
Do you mail people an actual egg?
Sequel idea confirmed.
Yeah.
We'll see how this one does. Maybe it'll be a sequel. I don't know.
Okay, then. Right, so I think I've run through my gamut of questions. Is there anything else you guys want to ask our guests here?
I think I'm good.
I've covered most of my stuff, so.
All right. So Kevin, Jay, I want to thank you for once again gracing our shores and talking about your new game. What platforms is Panic Porcupine currently available on?
It is currently on Steam and itch.
Okay.
And rest assured, it's coming to console. It's happening.
Right.
We don't have a date or anything yet to announce, but it's happening. It'll happen.
Right. So yeah, the game is Panic Porcupine. Be sure to pick it up on Steam or itch. How much does it cost?
Well, right now it's on sale for $5.99. It's 25% off, but usually it is $7.99.
All right, so be sure to pick it up today. And if you enjoyed this interview, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, and do everything you need to do to keep up with broadcasting in the modern age. Right, so Petty, play the transitional music. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion. So I suppose this topic worked out thematically with our interview this week because we were trying to think of what to talk about, and what we hit upon is the 30th anniversary of Sonic Tuesday. We're not talking about Sonic 2 specifically. We've already done that. We're talking about the marketing campaign around Sonic 2. And I know to listeners out there, that might be an odd thing to bring up. Because Sonic Tuesday, much like Sonic 2, just recently celebrated its 30th anniversary. But I suppose that we would need to go a bit into what Sonic Tuesday actually was, for those who might not understand why this was so profound. And that is, Sonic Tuesday was a launch day. And I know that sounds very vanilla in today's world, but in the world of 1992, this was a revelation.
Because
back in the day, video games were sold by kids going to their local stores and seeing things on the shelves and bugging their parents to buy them, or for the particularly involved ones, having a gaming magazine that they'd read that gave the names and maybe when they would come out of games at the level of like I don't know, holiday 1995 or whatever.
sometime before the heat death of the universe.
Mm-hmm. So that they could tell, so they knew when to expect those games to be in the shops, maybe when their parents went there. There was none of this Sonic the Hedgehog coming December 12th, 1975, be there or be square. Now, I know that date is completely wrong and probably could not be worse.
Yeah. Mind you, this wasn't a new concept even in 1992. In fact, 10 years prior, there was a thing called Pac-Man Day, where Atari actually had the plan to release, had a coordinated release across, I'm trying to remember if it was the United States or all of North America, but, the highly anticipated port of Pac-Man on the Atari 2600 on a specific day. Like, here's the thing about Sonic Tuesday. This took it one step further. This was the first time global coordination was instituted. November 24th, 1992 was marked as the day. Now, mind you, what actually happened was Japan got the game a few days earlier. Mm-hmm. But it's like, considering it was 1992, I think we can let this slide.
Yeah, and it's like I mentioned on writing room stuff, even though it did come a couple days early, 92 you didn't have digital game downloads. So by the time you would have imported it and all that, it would have been release time anyway.
It's also it's not like it was early enough that some fans could have ordered it from Japan instead of getting it locally. Even if I think the Sega consoles didn't have region locks, did they?
They did, but it was just a chip, and soft modding wasn't terribly hard. And if you just had a Game Gene, you could just bypass it entirely.
Okay, because I knew that a lot of the Nintendo stuff was like just literal, oh, hey, cartridge doesn't fit, too bad.
Well, you could pull some pins out of or some plastic spacers out, and oh, look, it works.
Yeah, with the Super NES, it was just a bit of easy soldering.
Mm-hmm.
From what I remember. Like, but anyway, yeah. It's also the internet. It did exist in 1992, actually, but it was so limited that, nobody was going to figure out that Japan got Sonic the Hedgehog 2 3 days before the rest.
Well, it wasn't like with US, you could have a Japanese setup Switch account and download the Japanese version a little early.
Okay, these are not the examples we should really be getting into. Fair. Because this is all modern stuff.
Yeah.
This was a direct response to the way it usually worked with Japanese game releases. That is to say, gradual rollout, and you want maybe not the granddaddy, the King Poobah of all of this, but one of the most prominent examples was actually Mario. I suppose another big one would be RPGs, but that's actually a bit of a different kettle of fish, because it's not hard to localize Mario games in terms of text.
Yeah.
No, it's just Mario ran into some issues with Super Mario Brothers 2, but I went into a lengthy discussion about Mario's release history with the first 3 games in the writers' room, but I'll condense it down to Super Mario Brothers 3. Super Mario Brothers 3 came out in Japan in 1988, like fall of 1988 or something like that, and did not reach the West, did not reach North America until 1990, the springtime. And I believe it didn't reach Europe until 1991. But now you'll note kind of a disparity of time here. That is, it was about 18 months between the North American and the Japanese releases of Super Mario Bros. 3. And the reason why that happened was because of the American Super Mario Bros. 2. Like, Nintendo did not need to bring over Super Mario Bros. 3 because it had Super Mario Bros. USA, Doki Doki Panic, Super Mario Bros. 2, whatever you want to call that. Like, and that was pretty standard in terms of releasing games. Here, it was actually, well, first of all, in terms of Sonic 1, it was actually reversed. North America got Sonic 1 first. And then, I'm trying to remember if it was like Europe and then Japan was the rollout. But, Sonic the Hedgehog was very specifically designed to topple Mario in North America. The biggest market, at the time, still to this day. Like, but considering that Sonic had become not just a superstar, the biggest thing Sega had ever done right out the gate, it was deemed important enough to have Sonic 2 available in all territories at the same time. Like, and while, yes, this was an easier thing to do than, say, a Pokemon game or Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest or, anything that required a lot of text, because, there wasn't a lot of text in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It still took a lot of coordination because, we're not talking about a limited release game. We're not talking about one of Sega's mid-tier affairs. We're talking about literally the biggest game of the year.
Hell, one of the biggest games of the 1990s.
Yes. And that means allocation. That means Sega had to make sure there were enough copies out in all the major territories in a very short amount of time.
Were hard.
Yeah. And we're also talking about cartridge lead times, which took months.
It takes more time to fabricate a cartridge than it does to
print a disc.
Yes.
Burn a disc.
Yes, it does. And here's the amount of cartridges that Sega had to coordinate. 3.2 million.
Yep, I have one of those sitting on my desk.
No doubt. Like I said, and that's just the initial batch of cartridges. If I'm remembering correctly, I think Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was the second highest selling Sega Genesis game of all time.
Sounds about right.
The only game that sold more was, the first Sonic the Hedgehog game. And also keep in mind, Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2 were both bundle titles.
Yup.
Yeah. So, all the kudos in the world to Sega for managing to coordinate this. Truly an unprecedented feat. Because, once again, nobody had done the global launch.
Yeah.
And nobody, and once again, it wasn't like nobody had done the specific date launch, but here's what Sonic Tuesday established. It established that this kind of thing would be a thing going forward. And I mean, like, even the immediate aftermath. Less than a year later, we had another very anticipated rollout of Mortal Kombat, complete with its own dumb, gimmicky name. Only Mortal Monday.
Yep.
Only because they couldn't think of a way to. Only because there's no day of the week that starts with a C.
Or a K.
No, it would be a C, and then they would make it a K.
Right. I'm just saying, failing that.
That
still
hurt.
Still Mortal Monday worked out well enough for them. And Sonic continued the yearly tradition. Granted, the next year was a bit odd because they didn't have Sonic the Hedgehog 3 ready to go. So it was, I don't think they gave it a specific name, but it was all the Sonic titles they had that particular year. Sonic CD, Sonic Spinball, Sonic the Hedgehog Chaos?
Triple Chaos or something like that?
I'm not sure if it was Chaos or Triple Trouble that year.
Something like that.
Yeah. And then Sonic the Hedgehog 3 got the February rollout. And Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic and Knuckles got October. Hell, even Nintendo got in on this because they had the same kind of hype roll, same kind of marketing, same kind of everything for Donkey Kong Country. I think NBA Jam also picked up on this. Point is, that is the lasting legacy of Sonic Tuesday. And that continued, snowballed into 99.99. First time I can remember when a system launch was heavily promoted.
Yep.
But that's a story for another day.
I think we've already had the Genesis discussion, but yes.
Well,
or not
that'd
Genesis,
be the
Dreamcast. Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that'll about do it for this discussion, and indeed this episode. So the week ahead, coming up on Friday, December 9th, we'll be having Jared Hoag of Something Nerdy Studios. Let's see. We will be talking about. Let me get the right page here. I hate that. Let's see. No, that. Here we go. It's got to load up. Live research. In a manner of speaking. Yeah, here we go. We will be talking about the game Former Dawn. Former Dawn is an upcoming action RPG for the NES. Set in the future on an exoplanet called Astrea, you take on the role of Jaguthel, a hunter toiling away in the lower ranks of the organization. Inspired primarily by 1990s JRPGs, this full-length, story-driven, action-packed epic adventure is unlike anything ever released on the NES. Help Jaku uncover the truth of Astrea and the origins of his people. So, we'll be talking about this thing on Friday. We do have a new episode of Moonhawk Studios Presents happening in about 20 minutes or so. You know how it is with Mac and start times. Right, and on the Sunday game reviews, we'll be having reviews of Panic Porcupine, Faircroft's Antiques, The Mountaineer's Legacy, Collector's Edition, Robotery, and Super Total Carnage. So look for all that. And until next time, I shall wish you good gaming.